Hi, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. Today I want to talk to you about how long should you run your grow lights. If you're growing indoors, under lights, what kind of a day length are you going to create within the 24-hour period? Now there is a scenario here that everybody uses this for. It's starting seedlings indoors early in the season when it's too cold outside. And for that, you're trying to pump in a lot of energy over the whole day. So what you get to is about 20 watts per square foot. I'll talk to you a little bit more about how I arrived at that number. And you want to do it over 16 hours. And that works pretty well to keep good, compact seedlings growing well during that early part of the season. However, there are other use cases for growing indoors under lights, some of which I'm demonstrating right here. I'm bringing in some of these plants for overwintering. Other ones are cuttings, unrooted cuttings, and they need a completely different scenario in terms of how much light you want to deliver and for how long. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about overwintering first, and the key concept in overwintering is that the amount of light that they will need depends on what temperature you're going to keep them at. So I'm going to start with the example of well-established roses in pots like these ones here. I've taken them up, they're on a cart now, we're quite near the garage, and I can slip them in for protection as needed, but I'm leaving them out in the cold and wet weather here. Cold primarily because I want to slow down their metabolism, get them dormant. Once these go fully dormant, I don't have to worry about their lighting requirements at all. I would take them inside, keep them in there as long as I need to shelter them from deep cold and particularly from harsh winds. But at that point, if they're fully dormant and the temperatures in there don't bring them out of dormancy, I can let them go with natural light just in from the windows of the garage or no light at all. They just won't care. So the temperatures I have to have it inside is an unheated room, something close to what it is outside. So when it approaches freezing outdoors, I'm get a little concerned about their well-being in the cold. I bring them in, but inside there isn't much warmer. It doesn't bring them out of dormancy, and so I don't have to provide any light. So those larger pots were well established, but these are young plants, may not be fully rooted yet, and I might be hesitant to let them go into a full dormancy and just stick them in the garage like that. If I felt like they needed more rooting time and I wanted to take them through the winter inside the house, I would do so, if I could, at a lower temperature. I might choose something between 8 and 12 degrees Celsius. That's pretty low. It won't boost their metabolic rate, and what will happen is they won't need as much light. So I would drop that initial recommendation, that 20 watts per square foot, right down in half to about 10 watts per square foot, and I'd probably give them somewhere between 8 and 10 hours of light, and that's it. Because you have their metabolism so low, they won't need all that light energy. Okay, now for cuttings. Now I talk about cuttings an awful lot, propagation being one of my favorite hobbies. This tray here is taken from roses out in the field, but they don't have roots on them. So they're not rooted yet. They have no way of pulling up moisture from the soil. So if I give them too much light, it will actually bring on that transpiration, open their stomata, and they will actually dry out much quicker than I want them to. So how much light do they need? Less than you might think. My recommendation on this, and this comes down to personal experience and recommendation, is about half of what I recommended for seedlings, in the range of 10 watts per square foot, and only for the range of 10 to 12 hours a day. If you're in a room like this where you have some natural lighting, you can let that go a certain amount of the way and maybe just top up at the beginning and end of the day, but you're really not looking for the high light levels you would for seedlings. So let's talk about that 20 watts per square foot recommendation, see where I came up with that. It comes down to that watts are not a measurement of light, watts are a measurement of energy used, so I'm pegging that to a particular light source. Specifically, I'm talking about white LEDs, the shop LEDs for instance, those 4-foot fluorescent replacements that you can get online pretty inexpensively, but basically the white LEDs convert light at such a rate that that 20 watts per square foot works out to be about the right amount for seedlings as they start up and for a duration of time before they have to go out into the world. What I will be clarifying now is to say that I drop that number down for things with lower requirements, and you could drop it down for houseplants as well, but I dropped it down for things like cuttings or for overwintering plants at low temperatures. But if you wanted to grow a high demand plant at high temperatures, you would actually have to give far more than that 20 watts per square foot. The example I'll use, let's go back to roses for instance and say, what if you wanted to overwinter your roses, but sometimes people ask me, do I really have to drop the temperatures or find a cool room? Well, the answer to that is that if you bring it up to room temperatures, 21, 22 degrees Celsius, the metabolic rate of that rose really demands a ton of light. If you don't give it, say, 40 watts per square foot in that same light source, it's going to be pretty awkward. It's going to stretch. It's going to have some metabolic problems, but it does become problematic even to deliver that much wattage per square foot indoors. It's just a lot of light to put in that. For that reason, people who really do want to use high intensity crops like cannabis or tomatoes in bloom actually have to go over to the specialty horticultural lighting, which can deliver more light per watt. So we are actually changing the calculation rate there. So for my purposes, I generally am saying for this video that that 20 watts per square foot is good for a medium demand plant. And if you want to go well beyond that, we're talking about different corners of the hobby, but indoor cultivation of high yield crops, again, high demanding crops like roses, tomatoes, cannabis, that's a completely different ball game, and you probably are better to go over to the cannabis growers for that source of information. I'm going to finish off with one last note on how long you should run your lights, and this comes back to that seedling scenario, and to say that although 16 hours is a pretty good rule of thumb for that use, there are some seedlings that doesn't agree with well, and I'm thinking things like spinach, cilantro, radishes, lettuce. If you run super long days on those for any great length of time, you can end up with problems with bolting. Also, for some of the cut flower varieties, things like Rudbeckia, Echinacea, Snapdragons, Cosmos, running at long day lengths, again 16 hours for an extended period, can tip them over into flowering mode. So if you don't want them to bolt or flower, avoid the plants that are on this list, or run them at a higher intensity and a lower day length. Somewhere closer to 12 hours might do it for those ones. All right, I hope that answered your questions on how long to run your grow lights. If you have any other questions, please drop them into the comments below the video. I'll see what I can do to help.